Hi everyone, welcome to the season finale of episode 5 and season 6 of Behind Your Eyes. And the lovely Carolyn is my guest today. So hi Carolyn, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Would you like to introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. My name's Carolyn Wallace, and I am a psychotherapist and a Kripalu yoga teacher, and also a spiritual director and archetypal consultant. And I have a business called Your Radiant Life, where I offer spiritual direction and archetypal consulting.
Well, I always start with the same question, and that is sincere. How are you doing?
I am doing okay. There's a lot swirling around in the news. There's a lot of fear that I see popping up in others, people that I work with, and myself as well. And I think one of our roles right now is to see how we can develop equanimity in ourselves. It's very important. And so that if we can radiate a sense of equanimity and peacefulness, that other people might feel the effects of that vibration, come into alignment.
Yeah. So they can follow by examples, or
or even just coming into the presence of someone who's energetically aligned. And I'm not saying that I'm that all the time. I'm certainly not. I strive to be. But if you're in the presence of someone who's aligned and connected to themselves and has a kind of a coherence between their mind and their heart, I notice that when someone is coming forward with that type of presence. And so I think it behooves us to make an effort to become that, so that we can help the collective who seems kind of restless right now.
So it's almost like a ripple effect on an energy level without others maybe even knowing.
I think so.
Interesting, yeah. And you say you work with archetypes, so I would love to know a bit more about what that means, because that is quite new to me.
So an archetype is a pattern. It's a psychological and emotional pattern that they live in the collective unconscious, and we're kind of developed over hundreds and thousands of years of humans living on the planet. These patterns have developed. And according to the system that I have studied, we each have our own personal 12 archetypes that we kind of carry with us, the way that's formulated our personalities, the way we react to things. And so understanding our archetypes as best we can and knowing what they are helps us, because if we don't know what they are, these archetypes tend to express themselves through their shadow sides. So for example, if I have the addict archetype and I'm not aware that I have it, it may come out in addictive behaviors. Or, if I have the saboteur archetype, which I do, which all of us have the saboteur, I may go through life not understanding why I keep sabotaging myself and getting in my own way of the goals that I really believe that I want to create for myself. So it's important that we become aware of our archetypes so that we can do a conscious creation instead of just living by default.
And do we also in one lifetime change archetypes, or?
No, we are, according to the system that I study, other people may disagree, but the system that I've studied, which is a Carolyn Mace, I'm a certified archetypal consultant through Carolyn Mace's program called Sacred Contracts, that we're born with our 12, that we choose our 12 before we come into incarnation and have those archetypes our whole lives. But what our job is to evolve them from shadow sides to their light sides. If we're not conscious, we're acting them out unconsciously. But if we take a minute to look and say, wait, what's this pattern in my life? What's going on here? And what are the steps I need to change the pattern so that it works in my favor instead of against me? That's kind of the work.
And how do we find out what those archetypes are?
Well, we've got 4 that are universal to everyone. I've already mentioned the saboteur. So everyone's got the saboteur. Everyone's got the child. Everyone's got the victim, and everyone's got the prostitute. So those are the 4. They're kind of foundational. They're called our survival archetypes because that's how we've survived our childhoods. Like we were smart kids. We got here. We're adults now, right? So they helped us survive. And then there are 8 others that are individual to people. And if people were going to come work with me, I would start them off with a list that's called the Gallery of Archetypes. And it's got about 70 or so archetypes in this long list. It's not comprehensive. If there's something else that really sparks for someone, I say, let's consider it. Let's put it in there. But basically what people do is they read through the list, and they're kind of classic examples of archetypes. Like we were talking about the storyteller earlier. So if you saw the storyteller in this list, you would say, oh, that resonates with me. That's a pattern I've had since my child. And so you're looking for patterns that you've had since your childhood, and about 8 others will probably really resonate with you, probably more than that. And so if you pick out 12 or 15 that really resonate, that you think really describe yourself, we would have a conversation and whittle it down to 8, and then you'd have your 12 that we would work with.
And do all the archetypes have like a good side and a shadow side?
They do. They do. You know, some archetypes start off seeming as though they only have a shadow side, for example, like a vampire or a bully or a coward. Those seem like they're only in the shadow, but you can evolve those archetypes every bit as you can evolve an archetype like an artist or a healer. There's good work to be done with all of them.
Yeah, because when you hear those words like a vampire or a bully, they don't really have a positive
connotation. Right.
Yeah,
Well,
so you think like, oh dear, that's not me.
Right. So when you're picking your archetypes, you got to be really honest with yourself and say, what is really, is this a pattern that I've had throughout my childhood, since I was a child and all the way through? And if it is, to be honest and say, okay, I've got the bully. I have dear friends who put the bully archetype right in their chart of origin, and it's okay because it's just what they're here to work on. There's no shame. Archetypes are impersonal. We can't help to have the ones that we have. They're,
Yeah. And it's good to know that what you can work on then.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm sure it can also be quite confrontational to admit to yourself like, oh, I'm a bully archetype, or,
That's right. But until you become conscious that you have an archetype like that, there's not a real chance that not a good chance that you'll be able to change it. You'll be able to evolve it. But once you start noticing that pattern in yourself, and as you go through your life and you're saying, wow, I really behaved like a bully today. Once you have that language, like bringing language is so helpful. And then we know that, for example, the bully archetype in the light can be a person who motivates others, can get, provide energy for people and to get them going without steamrolling them, get someone's consent and motivate them with their consent to do something a little bit better than they've been doing before. Then that they're talking about a bully in the light, they can have great power and be inspirational and provide support to people to get to the next level where they want to be, but with their consent. And
yeah, because when you say it like that, a bully can be quite powerful with words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Light a fire under people, get them moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, but you mentioned also in the shadow side, and you work with, or you coach women to heal shadow patterns. And of course, I would love to know how you do this and why it is so important.
Okay, well, becoming conscious of our patterns. See, when someone gives me a list of their archetypes, like their 12 archetypes, for example, which I support them to create, we can already see where there's a shadow side to every archetype. So I would talk to them about how is the shadow really showing up in your life. So right there, your shadow sides are present. They're visible. We're talking about them. They're not unconscious anymore. Then, for example, I use this example a lot because I know it so well. The victim archetype, for example, it's one of our survivors. We all have the victim. So once we become aware that we're behaving kind of in victim mode, where we're saying, oh, there's some unseen force keeping me down. I'm not able to get where I want to be. I'll never have a good relationship, or I'll never make enough money. It's just how my life is. once you start becoming conscious of a pattern like that, then there's a path forward. We can take a step into empowerment through, for example, invoking something like a warrior archetype, where we can start talking about boundaries and having strong boundaries against anybody who might be oppressing you, or even your own thoughts that are oppressing you. You have boundaries against, and then whenever that victim shows up in your thoughts in your life, you can tell yourself kindly, but you can tell yourself to knock it off. That's not showing up as the victim in the shadow is not really an elegant way to live your life. Where are your boundaries? Where do you need to have boundaries? Where do you need to stop leaking your power? And let's move forward from there.
Yeah, that's all about creating awareness and seeing your limiting beliefs or the pattern in your mind, your self-talk.
And changing the pattern and then living into a different pattern, living into a pattern that serves you better. And not only you, when you start living into the true light of your archetype, not only you'll be more empowered in your own life, you'll be so much more helpful to the people around you and to the people you work with and to your families and to the world.
Yeah. And probably you live a more healthy and happy life, of course.
Absolutely. When you're standing in your power and not letting other people steamroll what you do or let other people define you, when you can define yourself, which is another beautiful thing about finding your 12, and then we cast them into an archetypal wheel. So you have this wheel that's like the astrological wheel with 12 houses, and you see which archetype falls into which house. You kind of have a blueprint for your own life. And I have seen this be very, very empowering for women. People saying, oh, this is my life. So I really shouldn't worry about going over here and trying to learn how to be a storyteller, for example, because that's not in my chart. I mean, you certainly can do that if that's an archetype you'd like to bring in some of that energy. But if someone's saying you're being a bad person because you're not being an engineer, or you're not being a doctor, or you're not being a teacher, well, maybe you're not supposed to really go for those things because your archetypes are here. So let's focus on what yours are. And it can give people so much permission to just be themselves.
And I'm sure it also will bring clarity to some of your actions and behaviors.
Yeah. Career paths, how you show up in a relationship, how you show up at work, how you show up with your family. Yeah.
How you show up with yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Honoring the patterns that are there.
Yeah. Okay. After this, I will look into it. That's for sure. And I know you're also a yoga teacher and Reiki master, so I would love to know how you got into spirituality, really.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if there is an answer to that. Basically, I came into this world with a mystic archetype. So I've always had a deep connection with all things mystical. I lived in Washington, D.C. for 7 years as a young woman in my late 20s, early 30s, and became very involved in the yoga community there and became a yoga teacher there. And then I moved to Massachusetts, where I am now, because I really wanted to be part of the Kripalu community. In Western Massachusetts, there's a big yoga retreat center called Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health. And I had the privilege of working there for a few years. And got my 500-hour yoga teacher certification and loved every single minute of it while I was there.
Oh, that's amazing. And what did that bring you?
More understanding and depth and education about body, mind, spirit, how we can align ourselves and kind of put ourselves in the way of divine intervention. You know, when you have a meditation practice, you're kind of giving permission for the divine to enter your life, or meditation practice, or a prayer practice, and just learning about all those different ways that people can do that. And not only that, but how I can bring it out into the world, how I can be a meditation teacher for others, how I can be a yoga teacher for others. If I understand some Sanskrit and some chanting, then I'm bringing the names of God to other people as well. There's a resonance.
I love that you say meditation is like an invitation for you to connect with the divine, because I love to meditate, but when I started, I didn't use it as such, but it was more to calm myself, calm my mind, calm the body. relax myself. But now I've come to that stage where it is indeed for me like a communication with the
Yeah.
universe. So
And
it has
that's
evolved
how,
and grown.
that's how most people start off with meditation, is because our nervous systems are so overworked and overwhelmed. We need a place to calm down. It can be very healing in a place of calming. And that's why people come to, that's why I discovered yoga in the first place.
Mhm.
My first yoga class, I thought, oh, you mean actually people can feel like this, calm, without my nervous system spinning out of control? I mean, this was many, many years ago. So people come to meditation and yoga, I think, often for the sense of calm and the equanimity it brings. But then there's this whole other world that it can open you up to,
Yeah.
of deepening your spirituality if you're receptive to it. And some people don't want to go there, and that's fine. They use their yoga and meditation for what they want it for. But for
Yeah.
people who want to take it deeper, there are deeper paths to take.
Yeah, because like you said, a lot of us are now just overstimulated by everything. So I think it's important for us to have those moments to calm down, to regulate, and yeah, to reconnect with ourselves, really.
Right. That's right. Calm your
Yeah.
nervous system down. You can be much more effective in your life and in your interactions with others than when we're coming from a place that's just overloaded with energy.
Absolutely. And do you have a favorite way besides, of course, yoga and meditation for grounding?
A favorite way to ground besides yoga and meditation?
Mhm.
Um, exercise is important.
Mhm.
Um, I think for me, being the mystic, it's mostly yoga, meditation,
Mhm.
listening to the spiritual teachers. I have several spiritual teachers that I just love to spend time with, mostly not in person now, mostly online.
Mhm.
And it provides me a great deal of like insight and aha. And I just love that. The more I can learn, the more I can be inspired by people who are further along the path than I am,
Mhm.
the happier I am.
Yeah, to inspire and be inspired.
Absolutely. And then
Yeah.
whatever I'm learning, what I hope is that I'm taking that out into my work with others.
Mhm. And in your work as a therapist, is there like one thing or pattern that you see in those that are struggling? Is there a certain thing that you see repeating?
Um, what I do see, I've been a psychotherapist now for about 19 years,
Mhm.
and people come to me because of symptoms of anxiety or overwhelming, symptoms of depression or overwhelming. And what has to happen, I believe, is an untangling of their past, of their past traumas. They need to tell some stories of what happened to them in the past, and to have it be just witnessed with loving kindness, with support, um, suggestions that maybe they weren't wrong all this time. Maybe the environment in which they were raised just wasn't able to meet them as they needed to be met, but that doesn't mean they've ever done anything necessarily wrong.
Mhm.
Just means they weren't encouraged, validated, loved adequately.
Mhm.
And I think kind of untangling those pieces is what the therapy is about. Now, when I move to spiritual direction, not with the same clients generally, but with different clients, we're not doing so much untangling of the past, is that we're holding stories maybe, but not
Mhm.
so much in a way that a therapist would. We are seeing how your story connects with the pattern of your life, and then bringing the promise of the light side of your archetypes, or the light side of anything, bringing that promise into your life today. How can you make life better today? Because we're bringing the promise of the light in that we
Mhm.
might not have known to do otherwise.
Mhm. Yeah, because I heard a lovely quote once that reminded of what you said is that healing starts or needs hope. Otherwise, you can't heal.
That's right. That's
Mm.
right. Hope and trust are very, very important concepts in spiritual direction work. Yes.
Yeah, because I've been through severe anxiety many years ago, and for a long time wasn't hopeful that I would actually recover and be free from anxiety. But once I started my therapy with a therapist who was amazing and I could trust her very much, that would bring me hope. And when you have hope, you know healing will be inside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's yeah, for me, it's when I coach, I want to give people that hope.
Yeah. And I think some of what helps people the most is listening to stories like yours, people who have been where they are,
Yeah.
and now they've done a lot of overcoming. Not that they're ever finished products, but they've done a lot of overcoming. Their life is greatly improved. And if people can hear other people's stories of how they did it, that provides a lot of hope. Oh, if she can do it, then I can do it too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I'm no one special. If I can overcome it, so can anyone else, you know. So
That's how I feel.
absolutely. And like in the current healthcare system, what changes do you think that are needed to happen?
In the current healthcare system, oh my, well, um, I think much more access to healthcare in general would be fabulous for people. I think people's copays are too high, people's health insurance premiums are too high. I think healthcare is not accessible to so many because of how much it costs. And I think this is a travesty. And we really do need to figure out a way that everyone can access the healthcare they need, both for their physical health and their mental well-being.
Hmm.
Should be freely accessible to anyone who wants it. And I'm sorry that right now it doesn't seem to be.
Mm. Is there also a positive change happening with there being a bit more a conscious shift about the need for mental health care?
Well, I am in my little bubble of mental health and spiritual direction and archetypes, but it does seem to me that there's less of a stigma of seeking treatment and receiving treatment for mental health issues than there has been in the past.
Yeah.
But there's a long wait list for therapists, which means that people are not afraid to put themselves out there and put themselves on the wait list and say, I need some help.
Yeah, because when I went to therapy about, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago, literally people would say, oh, would think you're crazy. So when you need to go to a psychologist or a therapist, and there was such a stigma on it. And I'm happy to hear that that has definitely changed.
Yes. And thank goodness it has.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. People are a lot more aware and conscious of what it actually means to have mental health problems and that it's not, yeah, that you're not crazy and that actually most of us are dealing with some kind of mental
That's,
issues.
that's right. For people who pretend that they don't ever
Mm.
struggle with symptoms of at least depression and anxiety, they're probably not telling the truth.
Mm. And have you yourself ever dealt with any mental health struggles?
Absolutely. I had tremendous debilitating anxiety all throughout my teenage years,
Mm.
into my early 20s. And then it calmed down a little bit, but really it was in my 30s. I found two different therapists who helped me tremendously.
Mm.
And then my nervous system was able to calm down. It was right about the same time I discovered yoga.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
it's all for me about calming down the nervous system and having someone validate, stories from my past and kind of let me know that I wasn't doing it all wrong.
Right.
I wasn't doing life all wrong, and it wasn't my fault that I had these issues. What I've come to realize now is that it's not your fault if you're living in the shadow of an archetype or struggling with some kind of mental health diagnosis or illness at all. It's no one's fault. However, it is your responsibility to start to do better and to start to get the help you need, and to try to uplift yourself, not only for yourself but for the sake of others as well.
And for me, it was also important. Okay, I'm not weird or different. I'm just a bit more sensitive because that was really the case because I didn't know how to handle my high sensitivity.
Right. Well, who does? I mean, we go through our school systems. I don't know, here in the United States, there's not a whole lot of space for people who are very sensitive systems. It's not like you can go be in a separate classroom
Yeah.
that's like calmer for your nervous system. Kids are pretty much thrown together whether you're sensitive or not, and it can be very, very overwhelming for so many people.
Yeah, that was exactly the case for me because when I was finishing high school and I had to do exams, that was around the time that my anxiety started, and I really wanted to take my exam just alone in a say or with one teacher instead of in a big classroom with all these students, or it was even in a gym hall with tens of students. And I was like, okay, can I please sit by myself? And they said, no, no, you can't.
There's no accommodation for that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, but I just need that room right there and one teacher, and that's all. That's all I'm asking. And yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy how it just has to be like this and no other way, no exceptions.
Right. I mean, for the kids who are lucky enough to get on it here in the United States, we call it an IEP, but you have to go through all kinds of medical diagnosis and diagnosis from psychologist or therapist, and one person out of however many there are might be able to get an accommodation like that, but it's certainly not really accessible to every person who needs one.
Yeah. And for me, it was just at the time I didn't know I had anxiety yet. I was just feeling a lot of overwhelm all the time. I was like, okay, can you please make this exception for me? And like,
Right. For someone like you wouldn't have known you had to go get all these diagnoses and get all this paperwork done. It's so ridiculous.
it
All you
is.
needed was a little bit of support, you know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, but well, I'm fine now, so no, no worries
That's
there.
fine. But
But yeah,
it left its mark. It left its mark, right?
yeah,
So
of course. Yeah, it would have been great if the school would support me a bit more. But yeah, they didn't. So I didn't get to graduate because of that. Yeah.
yeah, that's
So that was a shame. But yeah, like I said, I'm doing fine right now. I don't need a college degree for
then what I'm probably seeing is if you're working with people on their mental health issues now, that
Mm,
makes me think that you probably carry, as I do too, the wounded healer archetype, because
mm,
you're here healing others now. And if you hadn't gone through your own story of being wounded and having that anxiety and not getting support you needed, you might not be able to be such a support to people now,
true.
because now you understand what it feels like to
Yeah.
have been in their shoes. And so that's a wounded healer archetype.
Yeah, I always say I make my mess my message. The quote from Tony Robbins.
What is the quote?
I make my mess my message.
You make it perfect.
Mm, yeah. So that's what I hope to do in my coaching as well. Well, I would love to know also what is the best advice you were ever given?
The best advice I was ever given. I don't know. I'm having a hard time thinking of what that is.
Mm,
Maybe the best advice I've ever, well, at least some good advice I've been given is to make sure I'm not staying stuck in my story, like staying stuck in a shadow side of the story,
mm,
in the trauma of your story. Like I am very welcome to have my story and remember my past and to honor my past. But if I stay stuck there, I'm never going to fully become into the human being I'm here to become.
mm,
I have to say, honor that past and then step into my present and my future from a perspective that carries more light.
mm.
And that is my birthright and also my responsibility to do that.
It can be quite hard, of course, because it's quite easy, if you can say, to live in the past and stay stuck in the past.
Well, I think most people do because they just don't know there's an alternative.
Yeah.
They don't realize there's a way out, there's a way forward. They just
Hmm.
think, I have this anxiety, I'm going to be this way my whole life.
Yeah.
I kind of thought that for a long time before I started really delving into what do these spiritual teachers have to say? What does this book have to say? What is this course telling me?
Hmm.
I needed help to see my way out. And now I
Hmm.
hope to help others as well.
Yeah. Because you can always say in your own mind, like, okay, this is my story and I cannot change it. But actually we have a lot more power than we think we do.
Exactly. I say that all the time. There's
Mm.
more power available to us than we could have ever imagined. And
Yeah.
then when we get to that next level, there's another level. There's just
Oh yeah.
more becoming available to us.
Yeah, and with healing the same, because when you're healing and you think, oh, I'm healed, I'm done, I'm okay now, and then another layer has to be exposed.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely.
Lifelong process of becoming. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, my last question is also always the same, and that is, when are you at your happiest?
Well, when I'm at my happiest, when I'm with my kids and they're happy also, like when we're all aligned and on the same level and connecting and laughing. I love to connect with them under those circumstances. I mean, I love my kids under any circumstances in any way they come,
Mm,
but it's just lovely when we're all like operating at a higher frequency together.
mm,
And then the other time I'm at my happiest, honestly, is when I'm working with women who I can see becoming more empowered, like in front of my eyes,
mm,
for the Zoom or even in person. I do sometimes work with people in person. And when we are going through their archetypal wheel and I can see the change. I had a woman just the other day looking at her chart and saying, I feel so empowered. She said, this is me.
yeah.
Like she doesn't have to be pursuing something over here because at some point someone told her it was a good idea. That wasn't part of what she's here to do. She's here to do these things here and she can evolve those.
Mm.
There's no end to the what she could create with just what's her gifts that she has that are right in front of her.
It's like you were giving her permission to be herself.
Exactly.
Mm,
Yes.
that's beautiful.
Or evolved version of herself if she chose that.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Caroline. It was really, yeah, a joy to talk to you, truly.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.